Bonjour. If you're learning French, I have a message for you. Yes, you can understand spoken French. Real spoken French. And I know right now it probably feels as doable as convincing a French train driver facing a pay cut to not go on strike. Sentences feel like one really long word. French people don't stick to the English conversation speed limit, and they don't use the words you were taught. And when they do, they pronounce them completely differently. But you shouldn't blame yourself. Here's why. There's 2 reasons. Oh, and by the way, I'm reading this from an article I wrote, so if you have already read it, I will put a link somewhere on the video or in the description for you to skip it. So the first reason why you shouldn't blame yourself is that real spoken French and school French are almost 2 different languages. And most schools and apps only teach the latter for some obscure reason. So if your goal is to understand living, breathing French people, chances are you've been taught the wrong language. And the second reason is that most teaching methods are text-based, but conversations are pure sound. Even when apps include audio, they show you the spelling at the same time. So your brain naturally takes the easy route. It reads more than it listens, and your ears don't get nearly as much practice as you might think. Imagine learning to swim while clutching the pool's edge. Okay, so let me bring this to life for you with some examples. So I'm going to give you 3 concrete examples that will make you wonder if French people are secretly pranking everyone. First one, standard spelling versus honest spelling. Here is what you see, les oiseaux, the birds. And here's what you hear, les oiseaux. And that was textbook pronunciation, by the way. Real everyday pronunciation goes one tiny step further. So the sentence, je ne sais pas ce qu'il faisait. And so I don't know what he was doing. What TV newscasters say is, je ne sais pas ce qu'il faisait. Je ne sais pas ce qu'il faisait. But what your neighbors say is, je sais pas ce qu'il faisait. So we're going from 8 syllables to 4. Mind you, some of your neighbors might switch to TV newscasters speak when in front of camera, or when speaking to you only. But even TV newscasters drop this formal speech, formal pronunciation the moment they're off air. Yeah, and I wrote merci to my parents for those endless drives through Greece. Without that perfect blend of teenage boredom and a blank notebook, I might have never come up with what I call honest spelling. Example number 2, library French versus living French. So it's not just pronunciation. Here's how to say, what should Paul and I bring for the pre-dinner's drink in 2 different languages. So formal French would be, que devons-nous amener pour l'apéritif, Paul et moi? And normal French is, Paul et moi, on doit amener quoi pour l'apéro? And here, because it's written, you can pause the video, you can go back and forth, and you can take time to think. But imagine not having the text at all, and just hearing that phrase unexpectedly in the middle of a fast-moving conversation, when words disappear the second they are uttered. It's tricky. Okay, example number 3. I called it immaculate fiction versus messy reality. So here's another way writing deceives us. You know those handy spaces between words? They're pure fiction. They don't exist. Not in speaking. You want proof? I'm going to read aloud a sentence with a 1-second pause between each word. I am a robot from an old science fiction movie, and listening to your smoke detector's low battery beep is more enjoyable. So listening to spoken French feels more like this And this is scriptio continua. And it was common in medieval Europe. The first ones to stop that madness were absolutely not the French. It was the Brits in the 7th century, the Irish and the English. So that's the thing about spaces. They conveniently tell us where words start and finish. Without them, the only way to make out individual words in an uninterrupted flow of French sounds is to know them by ear. Okay, don't cancel your plans to France just yet. Thanks to my secret learning technique that will make you fluent in just 30 days, you will... No, I'm kidding. Fluency doesn't happen in 30 days, and there aren't any secrets. Only common sense. 2 things. 1, learn the words we actually use. And 2, train your ear on their real pronunciation. Now let's be clear, unlike some online programs who promise fun and easy lessons, I won't sugarcoat it, this isn't easy. Easy is like refined sugar. Sweet and addictive, but empty calories. And like my mum says, eat your veggies first. Walking to the markets, picking the freshest ones and turning them into a meal, that's not easy, but you may actually find joy in the process. And the long-term health benefits are definitely worth it. When you understand real spoken French without subtitles, here's what happens. Learning to speak gets a whole lot easier and more natural, because your ear has internalized the patterns and grammar rules of the language. So instead of being stuck in your head computing complicated subordinating conjunctions, you get that sixth sense that makes native speakers say, I don't know why, but it just sounds right. Second thing, you get to enjoy French films and shows, which allows you to pick up cultural knowledge and references along the way. Instead of risking to become, as Milton J. Bennett said, he's an intercultural communication expert, a fluent fool. You don't want that. 3, you get more confident having interactions because you know you'll understand the reply. It allows you to have real conversations, saying something and then someone says something back. And you even get to understand group conversations and feel truly embedded in French life, instead of feeling like you're in a little bubble, disconnected from people. That's down the line, obviously. It's not like gonna happen in a split second. So in other words, you get to enjoy life with the locals, not just next to them. And that's why I do what I do. To help you walk the path that I walked when I moved to the UK and struggled to connect with people, but for you to do it more smoothly while avoiding the mistakes I made. All I can say is follow my mum's advice. If you're anything like me, you'll be glad you did. So where do we go from here? Well, this is the first in a long series of free and paid lessons. And here's where we're going to start and why. So instead of getting overwhelmed by rapid-fire French, let's start with something meaningful and manageable. Weather phrases. Weather phrases are ideal because they're practical. They're commonly used in everyday life, so you learn useful words. They're social, so they're great icebreakers because they're about shared lived experiences. And they're great for practicing with neighbors since responses are predictable. They provide a blueprint for the language. So they use really simple patterns that help your brain grasp the big picture, making future grammar and conjugation much easier to learn. For real pronunciation, they provide a smooth introduction to the most commonly used pronunciation quirks and word shortenings that most schools don't teach. And 5, they're fun. Weather phrases contain lots of colorful idioms that give insight into French culture, like il pleut comme vache qui pisse, it's raining like a cow pissing. And they say that we speak the language of romance. All right, so Let's get it started. It all starts with a simple icebreaker. So many things start this way. So this is the very first lesson. It's suitable for absolute beginners, and advanced learners will learn new things that will help them understand broad patterns in real spoken French. So, picture this scene. You're relaxing at a cafe terrace, taking in the sunlight, the delicious drink, and the bits of conversations buzzing around you. And the French person at the table next to you glances over and says, "It's hot, isn't it?" In French, obviously. We'll see that in a second. That phrase is the perfect icebreaker because it points out something that you probably have in common, feeling a little too hot, and it's not a direct question, so it doesn't demand an answer beyond a nod, but it opens the door for more. So in other words, it respects your choice to engage or not. So based on your overall attitude and body language when you respond, the other person will get a sense of whether or not you are open to conversation. Like I said, it's a great ice melter. Unless, of course, you didn't catch what they said. And I hope you didn't catch the terrible joke I made just before. So, let's see if you would catch it. Right? So, since regular humans don't yet come with subtitles, let's start with the sound only. Il fait chaud, hein? Okay, so try to guess what the recording means before clicking here, because active learning beats passive consumption. So even when you have no idea what the answer is, being actively engaged makes your brain more receptive to new information. So you can replay that bit of the video, you can pause if you need some time to think, I'll let you do that, you can pause the video or replay it, and now I'm going to reveal the answer in the form of the honest spelling. Il fait chaud, hein? So, honest spelling, the sounds vanish the second you hear them. And honest spelling, what it does is it captures them on the fly and it puts them on pause, giving you all the time you need to explore each part. And it may look foreign at first, but it's exactly what your ears have to deal with. Try to identify a few words, so you can pause the video now before I open the What We Write section. Okay, what we write. Il fait chaud, hein? So, sadly for us all, French spelling loves playing hide and seek with sounds. So take a second to compare the honest spelling with the actual spelling to connect the dots between what we write and the sounds we make. Then, so you can pause the video for that and then make your best guess as to what these words mean. And here we go. It's hot, isn't it? That's what it means. So I have a saying in France, c'est en forgeant qu'on devient forgeron. It is by forging that one becomes a blacksmith. Well, I would like to be able to say a forger, even though it's not a word in English, because, you know, in French we say forgeant, forgeron. It sounds nicer in French. Forging, blacksmith. Well, anyway, it is true that the best way to get good at something is to try doing that thing. And you've just done that, so whether you got it right or not, bravo. Now, have you noticed that this lesson mirrors the natural way your brain processes spoken French? First, pure sound comes into your ears. Second, you map those sounds to French words you know. And three, you connect those words to meanings. Initially, you do that through English words. So, pure sounds, you map the sounds to French words you know. And three, you connect those words to meanings. And with practice, your brain becomes better at doing all these steps simultaneously and automatically. For now, we're walking through them carefully, but soon you'll find yourself doing exactly the same thing, but just faster. Now, we have a problem. There's tens of thousands of French words. Memorizing their pronunciation one by one would take longer than it took the immortals of the Académie Française to write their latest dictionary. They started in 1986, and they finished last year, 2024, November. Do you really want to spend all that time like them, buried in textbooks? I don't think so. That's why instead of just teaching isolated words, I'm going to break down the patterns behind French sounds. This will help you develop pattern recognition skills that you can apply to many other French words. It's like having a few master keys that unlock entire neighborhoods instead of needing one key for each individual house. This is what your neurons look like when you try to remember the pronunciation of thousands of words one by one. They don't look very happy. Apart from this one, right here. So, let's go beyond text and make sense of the sounds first. So let's break down the pronunciation of il fait chaud. Il fait chaud, word by word. First, a quick aside. No need to furrow your brow, squint your eyes, and turn into a tomato, trying to cram every detail that follows into your head. There will be a test. There will be no grades. Miss Rogers is gone. We're all free now. So just be present, pay attention, and let the information wash over you like a gentle Mediterranean wave. I'll repeat these points, what you're going to learn, across many lessons, and eventually they'll click into place without you even noticing. So no pressure, no stress, just do it the French way. Except when driving and talking politics. Alright, so let's look at this first. Let's look at chaud. Chaud. So it means hot or warm. And now let's have a look at the letters on strike. Chaud, the D. The D is silent when it's the very last letter of a French word. With only one exception, sud, south. And of course, words of English origin like iPad. An iPad. Why we write it that way? Let's look at the sh sound. That sound usually comes from the letters CH. But it sounds like the English SH with a soft start, like in Chicago. Okay? Nobody says Chicago, like in normal English words with CH. Chit chat, chick, Chicago. Why? Well, because the city was founded and named by French speakers. And let's look at the O sound. So that sound usually comes from the letters AU or O. We just couldn't decide which one looked prettier, so we kept both. And you'll notice that it's shorter than in English. In English, you tend to make waves with the vowels. O, O. We say O. Cut it short. Okay, so chaud. Now, let's look at this one. Means, literally it means ha, but really it means isn't it, right? It's hot, right? It's hot, isn't it? Saying ha sounds, it doesn't sound really good in English, but in French, in this situation, sounds perfectly fine. So, letters on strike, the H. The letter H is like that friend of yours who hasn't figured out how to unmute themselves on Zoom. You can see him, but you can't hear a thing. In other words, the H is always silent in French. That brings funny situations. When we speak with a French accent like this, if I speak like this, it is very hard for us to make the H sound. That is why I don't say it is very hard. I say it is very hard. It is very hard. And so if I really don't like someone, if I really, really, really don't like someone, you know what I will say with a French accent? I will say, I really don't like you. I hate you. Which can be confusing. Anyway, why we write it that way? I-N. So it's a sound that doesn't exist in English. It doesn't exist in English. It even has its own funky symbol in phonetics. You don't need to learn this, but I figured it would be interesting to put it there so that you see there is absolutely no N in the un sound. This is phonetics, and if there was a n sound, it would be written here. So keep that in mind. It's the same thing for any nasalized sound. So in French, like on, un, en. So on, for example, in bonjour, there's no N sound at all. So we don't say bonjour. Like I've heard some English speakers say bonjour. That's not how we say it. Bonjour. You might want to say bonjour. That's better. Don't say the n sound. There's none at all. So the fact that that sound doesn't exist in English makes it harder for English ears to distinguish un from other nasalized sounds, like en and on. Un, en, on. Maybe they all sounded the same to you. If that's the case, don't worry. That's pretty normal. And so we'll get to that in another lesson. Those sounds are called nasalized because we use our nose to make the sounds. And so the sound un usually comes from the letter combination in, but it can also come from the letter combination ein. It's pronounced exactly the same. We added an e, just looked pretty. And ien as well. So you have ein and ien. And ien is pronounced yen. So ien is pronounced yen. So you've got ein and ien. French spelling should definitely be used as an eye test. All right, let's move on. Il fait chaud. Okay, this one. Fait. This one, there's a real debate behind that one. So it means literally makes or does. Let's look at the letters on strike. T. The T is the most famous silent letter in French. It hasn't shown up to work in centuries. So we generally don't pronounce it when it's the very last letter of a French word. This excludes, of course, words of English origin like internet, quitte, set, and so on. There are not many exceptions to this. There's always exceptions in French, but this time there's not many. So the most useful exceptions are the words but, set, huit, out. That one, the spelling is crazy. Out, that's this one. Out, ouest, est, and most words that end in ct or pt, like concept, direct, exact, etc. Don't worry about memorizing this. The exceptions will stick naturally as you hear them used. So why do we write it that way? Let's look at the E sound. That sound can simply come from the letter E with an upward accent, or when we feel fancy and want to add letters, it can come from the letter combination AI. However, like I said, the AI thing is a bit of a contentious topic. In the southern half of France, roughly speaking, we keep it simple and pronounce AI exactly like E, like the E with the upward accent, most of the time. And this is not a thick southern accent thing, it's just normal pronunciation in the south. In the northern half of France, they sometimes pronounce it like E, they sometimes pronounce it like E, and sometimes a mix of the two. E. Something about the cold must make their vowels shiver. That's a relatively modern pronunciation shift, by the way, so the IPA, traditional phonetic transcriptions, often miss that nuance. All in all, the difference between southern and northern pronunciations is small, and it shouldn't worry you. It's only there for certain Parisians to smugly declare their French the purest, whatever that means. Okay, so the E sound can also come from verbs ending in ER and EZ. Manger, voulez-vous coucher avec moi? That kind of thing. That's a song. One syllable words ending in ES. Only one syllable words. So les or des. And the A sound can also come from longer words ending in ET. Poulet, objet, bouquet, or with a northern accent, poulet, objet, bouquet. So you have the same earth-shattering north-south debate with ET and ES. Like I said, the sound difference is small, and I want you to spend less time studying, more time in the sunshine. So I keep things simple and default to A. French is complicated enough as it is. And finally, ife. Ife. Okay, so this one is going to surprise some people. And I have to whisper a little bit because there's another debate. So, il fait means he or it makes. It makes, it does, he makes, he does. Here it means it. Okay, so make sure no French speaker is looking over your shoulder, because I'm about to reveal one of our dirty little secrets. We rarely, if ever, pronounce the L at the end of il when talking about the weather. Some French people enter a state of utter denial when I point this out. Moi, I would never. But lips don't lie, and we even do it on TV. You can click the link if you want to see that. It's one among many examples that I found. So we even do it on TV. We do it completely unwittingly, of course, but because we don't listen to ourselves speak, and why would we are not aware of the fact that we do that, but we do it. And we even do it in all sorts of other phrases with il and elle, or even they, ils and elles, even though we never say the S. But I digress. More on that in another lesson. So therefore, that gives you 3 pronunciation variations. You have il fait, so-called proper pronunciation. In the context of talking about the weather, most people never say it like that. And that excludes medieval knights, wig-wearing noblemen, and poorly informed Americans. So il fait, proper, so-called proper pronunciation. Ife is the most common pronunciation. And finally, there's even fait. Sometimes we just can't be bothered, and we drop the il altogether. And sometimes we actually do say the E sound, but we whisper it. It's a quintessentially French pronunciation quirk. So, because we whisper it, it mostly sounds like fait. It's hard to do on command, but I'm going to try. Il fait beau, hein? Il fait beau, hein? Something like that. Enjoying the jingling of your new pronunciation master keys? Gosh, some of the things I wrote, it really don't work in speaking. My point is, the more pronunciation master keys you have, the less rote memorization you need. Because when things make sense, they burn less brain power and they stick more easily in your head. And you know what else does the memory heavy lifting for you? Getting to know words. Like really getting to know them. I'm talking about the difference between hearing someone's name, this is Michel, and really getting to know them. Like, this is Michel who makes the best tarte tatin in Lyon, hitchhiked across Canada once, and has a peculiar habit of naming his houseplants after French philosophers. Now, which Michel will you remember better? So, because of that, the next section is beyond rote, make sense of the words. So we're going to breathe life into these sounds by connecting them to meanings. And by the way, did you know that the French word for to understand, comprendre, literally means, in its etymology, to take with you. Comprendre. Con is like co and cooperate, to operate with. So comprendre, to take with you. As often, folk wisdom was onto something. To truly understand something, we need to connect it with what we already know. Connect the unfamiliar, the new, to the familiar. So we need to take it with us into our existing mental landscape. So in this section, I'm going to try to give each French word a rich context. Give its cultural nuances, how it's actually used by real French people, its personality quirks, and the little stories that make it stick in your memory without effort. Because when a word has a story, it's no longer just a collection of sounds and letters. It's an old friend that you're happy to bump into again. One that never borrows money. I'm gonna get emotional. Old ways die hard, so let me hammer this down once more. Don't try to memorize every detail. These stories are meant to make French stick, but some of them won't resonate with you, and that's okay. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy. So, il fait chaud, hein? Chaud, let's start with chaud. Chaud means hot or warm. We don't have separate words for hot and warm. We just say très chaud, very hot, or pas très chaud, not very hot, assez chaud, quite hot, and so on. And by the way, the word chaud has the same origin as the Spanish caliente and the word calories, or calorie, which you burn, So hopefully that helps you remember the word. Now, let's look at this whole phrase, il fait chaud. So, il usually means he, but here it means it, and it's impersonal, meaning it doesn't represent a person. Instead, it represents the weather, just like it in English. It is hot, meaning the weather is hot. Il fait literally translates to it makes, but here the meaning is different. This is the phrase we use to talk about ambient temperature. Just ambient temperature, so the atmosphere. We use a different phrase to talk about the temperature of an object. So ambient temperature, il fait chaud, literally it makes hot. You can think of it like it makes me hot, because ambient temperature affects your whole body, whereas, an object like a cup of tea only warms up your hand. And so for objects, we say c'est chaud. C'est chaud. Literally, it's hot. So imagine you want to say that the weather's hot, but you say c'est chaud instead of il fait chaud. French people are going to look at your hands, wondering, where's that hot thing you're talking about? Note, we also use the phrase il fait to talk about the weather in general. So it's sunny, it's grey, it's muggy, except for rain, snow, hail. More on that in a future lesson. Now let's look at this word right here, un. Un, very French. So like I said, it means something like isn't it or right. It's not exactly a word, it's a sound we sometimes make to just wrap up a sentence. And if we say it with a rising intonation, un, instead of un, it subtly asks for the listener's approval. You can think of it this way. Canadians say at the end of sentences. I hope I didn't butcher that. And the French, with our prominent noses, or as a famous poet and swordsman would say, with our peninsula. You can click the link in the article if you want to learn more about that. So the French, with our prominent noses, we use the nasalized version of un. Un. So if you look at the phonetic symbols, and un, they're very similar. That's not a coincidence. It's because phonetically they're very close. Okay, so let's recap. Remember, active learning beats passive consumption. And you know what beats active learning? Well, active relearning. More active learning. It's no coincidence that most words related to successful learning start with re. Remember, or re or re, R-E. Remember, recall, retrieve, reconnect, or in French, rappeler, retrouver, relier. Each time you pause, recall and reconnect the dots, you create deeper, more resilient memory traces. Your ears become more attuned, your comprehension more fluid, you transform fleeting sounds into lasting neural pathways. So let's do this again. You can pause the video if you need more time. I'm not going to take too much time for people who already know the answer. Il fait chaud, hein? All right, on a spelling. Il fait chaud, hein? What we write and what it means. There you go. It's probably not too hard since there was only one sentence in this lesson, but it's a start. Et voilà! There you have it, your first glimpse into real living French. In 3 days, the next lesson lands in your inbox if you have subscribed. We'll expand this weather pattern with another practical phrase that real French people use daily. More master keys, more memory hooks, more spoken quirks, etc., etc. And by the way, I don't know if you've noticed, but the YouTube algorithm, the YouTube notification system is a bit unreliable sometimes. So if you want to make sure you never miss a free lesson, I set up an email notification system. I'll put a link in the description. You can sign up for that. And when you're ready to dive deeper, you can subscribe for the full lesson. So here it would be 8 times the content you've just experienced. So 8 new phrases, a lot more patterns and pronunciation insights. So you can build a comprehensive toolkit for understanding real spoken French. No pressure though, the free lessons will keep coming. As always, thank you for your interest in my language. Not your language. Thank you for your interest in my language. I hope this was helpful. À vendredi.